Hi everyone, it's Miss Vasquez, and before we start reading, I want to give a shout out. Shout out! My shout out is going to go for Matthew and Notre Dame. Every day, his mom sends Miss Pickett photos of all the work that they're doing at home, and I know that Matthew's been working really hard to watch our tech study videos. Now, I'm going to give Matthew a round of applause. Now, today, for our video, you will be able to identify the parts of a text or the parts of a book. Now, if you want to follow along at home, you can grab a book and identify the parts with us. Now, before we read a brand new story today, we are going to look closely at Ganesha's Sweet Tooth to identify the parts of this book, and then we'll do it with the story we're reading today. Now, the very first thing that I do is I want to look at the front cover. On the front cover, there's some important things that I can find, like the title of our book or text, the author and illustrator's name, and sometimes we can see any illustrations that the illustrator has made. Here is Ganesha's Sweet Tooth. This is the front cover of our text. I know that the title is right here. It's big and it's bold. Now I'm going to look for our author or illustrator's name. I see Sanjay Patel and Emily Haynes. Those are our author and illustrator. Then I want to look closely at my cover illustration. What do you see on the cover of this text? Yeah, I see an elephant. I see a small mouth. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we flip our book over and we look at the back cover. Now, on the back cover, we might see quotes from the book. We could see summary or a small piece of information about the book. Now, we don't always see that for all of our books. Let's see. What do you notice about this back cover? Yeah, all I see is an illustration. After we find the front cover and the back cover, we get to open the inside of our book and look at the title page. On the title page, we might see the title of our text and the publisher. That's the company that printed the book. Ganesha's Sweet Tooth. I see the name, our title of the text so big in the middle of our title page. I also see the author and illustrator's name. And then down at the bottom, I see the company that printed our text. Now, we're going to start reading a new book today, and you're going to help me identify the parts of this text. The text that we're going to be reading today is called Brick by Brick. Can you tell me where the title is? Yeah, it's up there. It's big, it's bold, it's in some red-brown letters. Now, do you remember what this is called? If you said front cover, you're right. What can I also find on the front cover? I can find the author and illustrator's name. Yeah, the author is Charles R. Smith, and it's illustrated by Floyd Cooper. I also see a front illustration. Now, I get to turn it around, and do you remember what this is called? Yeah, this is the back cover of our text. Now, the cover always feels different than the inside of our book. So this is the back cover. Here, I see a summary, information about the book, and I also see some lines from the book. What is it called when I open the inside of my text? This is the title page. Now, what do you see on our title page here? Yeah, I see the quote, not the quote, silly me. I see the title and it's big and bold. I also see the author and illustrator's name and who published, who made the books at the bottom. Then I see an illustration. What does that illustration look like? If you said the White House, you're right. So we're going to start reading our text now. Under a hazy hot summer sun, many hands worked together as one. The president of a new country needs a new home, so many hands work together as one. I see an illustration of George Washington on a horse. I see a man right beside him. Black hands, white hands, free hands, slave hands. Slave hands dig, saw, and break bone, laying the foundation for the president's home. Rented as property, slave hands labor as diggers of stone, sawyers, and bricklayers. Now, from what I read, I think, or I understand, that slaves are helping build a very important part of our nation. Some of the slaves were rented out to help build. Diggers swing axes to break up stone, laying the foundation for the president's home. Jerry, Jess, Charles, Len, Dick, Bill, Harry, Jim. Here's an illustration of what the people might have looked like who built our nation. Slave hands swing axes 12 hours a day, but slave owners take slave hands' pay. Slave hands sweat under a bright sun. Slave hands toil until each day is done. So slaves are working incredibly hard to help build the White House, but they weren't getting any of the money. Chiseling, carving, and transporting stone. Slave hands ache, dark skin to white bone. Slave hands blister under a bright, hazy sun. Slave hands toil until each day is done. Sawyers saw blades through logs of oak wood 7 days a week where a forest once stood. Alec, Ben, William, Moses, Simon, Peter, Frank, Thomas. Up, down, push, pull. 2 men per pit saw. Spraying sawdust until slave hands are raw. So these men that are working incredibly hard, they are working until parts of their bodies hurt and they're unable to work anymore, but they're still pushed to keep working. Slave hands saw 12 hours a day, but slave owners take slaves' pay. Slave hands bleed under a hot, hazy sun. Slave hands toil until each day is done. Clay, sand, and water is mixed by young slave hands to create bricks. Nameless, faceless, daughters and son build brick by brick until each day is done. So even children were working. Oyster shells mixed with rock, lime, and sand become mortar for bricks spread by slave hands. Will, Nancy, Gerard, Manuel, Liverpool, Lester, Herbert, Samuel. Slave hands sprayed mortar 12 hours a day, but slave owners take slaves' pay. Slave hands crack under a hot, hazy sun. Slave hands toil until each day is done. Slave hands learn new trade skills using chisels, saws, hammer, and drills. Skilled hands learn 1 shilling per day, reaching slave hands closer to freedom with pay. Sounds like he's saving his money to be free. Brick by brick, slave hands build. Day by day, slave hands gain skills. Months by months, slave hands toil, planting seeds of freedom in fertile soil. Freedom has a price in the land of liberty, so slave hands toil to no longer be property. Brick by brick, where a forest once stood, grows the president's home, made of stone and oak. Slave hands build and slave hands save, shillings to be free and no longer a slave. Slaves' hands count shillings with worn fingertips and purchase freedom earned brick by brick. Now this book tells the story of hard Americans, African Americans, Black Americans, who were once slaves and worked so hard to help build our nation that some of them were able to pay for their freedom. Thank you for reading with me. Today, you can look for your very own book and identify the parts of a book, like the front cover, the back cover, the words, and the illustrations inside of the text. Thank you.